So back to that strange phenomenon when you become the parent of a child with a disability. Often it starts at birth or diagnosis or shortly thereafter, and you find yourself in this really strange place where you recognise only deficit-based adjectives are being used around your child. It snowballs, you start believing the hype, those deficits get written on form after form, file after file, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The reality is it's actually really unkind and really unfair. Professionals will pick up a document and read about your child before even looking in their eyes or looking at their face, and you can't tell me it doesn't have an impact. But let's think about what that might look like for somebody else. When being introduced to you just now, John didn't say, I'd like to introduce Gina. She has an inability to concentrate or focus for any length of time on housework, laundry, ironing, dusting. She rarely completes sentences without expletives. She often makes poor choices around food and alcohol. Gina's considered overweight. So, it seems silly, but it's what happens to the most vulnerable people in our society. And we keep letting it happen over and over again. And once that script is written, you can often then, as a parent of a child with significant disabilities, find yourself in what my husband and I coined the tournament of the deficits. It's like my kid outcracks your kid. This is how you get services or this is how you get supports. And it's amazing that we fall into this trap. But it's so entrenched, and professionals and the experts take you there. I know we've ended up in that space. The great thing is, though, it's never too late to change that script and to change that path that you end up on. And when we reject the notion and see the positives and the values, and provide the scaffolding for our child to shine and for those gifts to be revealed, we get a very different society starting to emerge. So this is my son, Mark. That he can't, he won't, he'll never kid. He's 12 years old. He had a very rocky start to life that included prematurity and later on an acquired significant brain injury. His deficit list certainly has some oomph, and with Mac's permission, he agreed for the purpose of this that we could run through what that looks like on paper. So very severe cerebral palsy, a significant vision impairment, is unable to move independently, relies on a fully supportive wheelchair, is non-verbal and unable to independently access his communication device. He needs to eat pureed food and uses enteral feeding for his liquids. Mac needs assistance with every aspect of his daily life. The holy grail of deficits Mac was given on enrolment at primary school from the Regional Office of Department of Education was Mac is the most disabled child ever to be mainstreamed. Yep, we gold medalled in the tournament of the deficits. The reality of that is, yes, Mac is all those things, but he's also a kid with a great sense of humour who allows you to revel in the stillness of just simply being with him. He started some partner-assisted communication when he was 6 and is accessing the curriculum in his mainstream school. He has some really great mates who are really engaged in his life, and he rocks our world. Perhaps interestingly for Mac, when you grow up with a different set of parameters, you view yourself very differently and you see yourself in a very positive light. So this is a little video of what Mac did at school 2 years ago when he had to do an About Me assignment. We helped him with the software, but he communicated what he thought was important in his life. So we'll get that video happening. look at the deficit list to how Mac views himself. And I think that's really important, and that's what gets projected from Mac and around Mac all the time. How we got there was really, the stuff we were listening about yesterday was that having that vision and talking about that. And initially we used to have a set aside one dinner where it might have been Mac's dad and I, and then aunts and uncles or cousins might be involved, and we'd talk about what our vision for Mac was and have it as a little mini planning meeting. As Mac became able to be involved in that, he did. But being an almost teenager, he's actually still pretty keen to abdicate all responsibility around that. So, we don't push. But the vision we came up with for Mac is pretty simple. It's pretty broad and it hasn't got any time frames. It's an overarching set of features that we think will help Mac have a good life. So happiness, belonging, independent or interdependent learner, an ordinary life filled with family, friends, fun, and to build a life where natural supports are plentiful, to expect education, to expect employment, to be a valued member of the community, and to, so on, down to following his dreams. So it's the same kind of vision that we would have for ourselves or for anyone. And the thing, when you're looking at visions and looking at things like this as a basis to your planning going forward with NDIS, if you see stuff that you like in other people's words or visions, grab them. These wouldn't be all our words. We would have grabbed these from other people's vision plans that we saw over the years and said, we want that. We want what she's having. But what's the point of the vision? Well, for us, it was a tool, and it provided us a framework for us to test things against, because it wasn't always innate. Things that were happening around Mac were keeping us on track. So one of the things way back in kindergarten was we found out Mac was being taken, when the aide was going and doing class errands, Mac was being taken with her to go and do those errands. And it didn't feel right, but we didn't know why it didn't feel right. So we went back to the vision and tested it, and we could see all these risks were that he was risking the ordinariness. Other kids weren't doing that. It risked his sense of belonging, his membership of the class. It risked his natural supports. It meant that the students weren't then beside him while the aide was out of the class. So by testing it, we had the confidence to raise it with the school, and they were a bit scared about him not having the aide velcroed to him, but we got there. The second test, which probably has had the greatest payoff and was the most important, was that the students weren't allowed to be pushing Mac in his wheelchair. And so when we tested that against the vision plan, again, all those same sorts of things, but the big one was the ability for Mac to build natural supports. And it seems sort of a bit counterintuitive at 5 years of age that you should have natural supports, but you can and you should. And so when we looked at that and we sat down and said, well, why is that such a risk? What we realised was that if we allowed that to happen, we were going to be sending a message to, Mac was in a school of about 1,000 students that he'd crossed paths with and their families, that you can only be with Mac if you're paid to be there. And that sets him up for being vulnerable, for being unsafe. That means that they would never question what's going on with the person supporting him. It meant he could become isolated. If the kids didn't like the aide that was there or the adult that was there, they wouldn't approach him. And he wouldn't be doing normal kid things. He would have been denied that dignity of risk. So with that insight and our sort of realisation that this was pretty serious, we had to work with Department of Ed and the school was pretty supportive. And we designed a wheelchair attendant licensing program that the kids helped develop, and it had different push zones. So if it was considered an unsafe push zone, that was a red zone, and that was an adult-only one. But then the others were orange and green push zones, and they got laminated licences that they just loved. And there's still children today who have left school and their parents have said, can I throw your wheelchair licence out? And they're like, no, I might need it. So even there's some first-year university students that still have a little wheelchair attendant licence tucked in their drawer at home, which is just gorgeous, that they're not too cool for school. And it was just such a successful program. The kids became so autonomous. So we might just play. I've just got some stuff some images that we'll talk over, just so you can sort of see what it helped grow into. So the flow on from sticking to our guns on that matter was immense. It set the scene for what was now the expectation. It was rare for an adult to even touch Mac's chair during the course of the day. Students pack up and unpack his communication gear and set it all up for him. It was very structured in a curriculum-based way as well. It became more natural that he was being supported by students, and they were growing and getting benefits as a result. They learned to advocate for him, and the teachers used to shake their head at the amount of times that they would hear, you know, "Sir, that's unjust. You just gave everyone a choice and you assigned Mac a group or assigned him." And the teacher say, "Yeah, you're right. Can you go and ask him what he wants to do?" When they went to school camp, Mac was in a room with the kids. They had a walkie-talkie to call us if there was a problem. I mean, you know, and they've been going to camp since they were 8, I think. You know, the kids learned out. There was rules for school and rules out of school. So there's kids that are happily giving him a milkshake out of school, down his tube and down the pipe, as they refer to it. And we're already sort of thinking, gee, Mac's probably going to have a van when he's older and a driver. When we go to the pub, maybe we all chip in. So, you know, they're future-proofing themselves with designated drivers. And we can't, you know, we don't really know. By giving these opportunities, was he lucky that he just ended up with a great cohort of kids? Or does him being in the midst of it create that great, and when you give opportunities, does that create that great cohort? Mac's interesting because he just gives kids that soft place to fall, because he's not in your face about, you know, wanting to be doing everything with you. He's got this stillness about him, and he's waiting for you to communicate with him. So it's really lovely watching anyone that's struggling kind of gravitate, and they might just be hanging with him that day, and he just gives them that time to sort of regather themselves. But they're not precious with him. If he's the one that's been mucking up in class, they'll dump him into it as soon as look at him. Like they, you know, they don't care that he gets in trouble the same as they would. By grade 3 and 4, we had some amazing stuff going on, and I'm just going to share in a bit some more bits and pieces about what the kids did and how they started controlling their own destiny. It was a process, you know. We had to do it baby steps. There's images, and even images over here of the kids swimming with Mac at the swimming carnival. Well, we built up to that. In the first year, his dad went in for the free swim, and the next year we got a bit more distance away from him, and then I swam with him in some races, and by 6th grade, the kids swam with him in every race. We got to the point where we really didn't have any blockers at the school. And the kids drove that, and that was so important for the teachers to see that. So you can see how they just become so comfortable. Interestingly, just starting high school, all of that's been stopped. So it started badly. The kids are not allowed to push him in his chair. He's been fairly isolated. He's been expected to work under fairly extreme conditions. But the saving grace is, despite the school telling us at a meeting on day 7 that not one student wants anything to do with him, what's been happening as the Year 7 kids are sort of coming up for air and 2 weeks into it, they're meeting us at the car when we're loading back in, or seeking us out at the swimming car and going, what is going on? We're not allowed near him. They make him sit up at the top of the basketball court and we're down the bottom. I said, well, you've got to go up and see him. We go up there, then they tell us to go back to our area. They make him sit in the out of bounds area. So, you know, there's a lot we've got to do. We've got a lot of work to do. We feel like we're back at the beginning, but we've got our vision. We restock, and now we've got all these peers and this community behind them. We're getting messages from parents, my kids are really worried what's going on. So we've got that behind us to actually move on and get it changed. We've got to find our allies. We've got some allies. We're just sort of now putting all our, you know, advocacy training into and strategising and working out how do we fix this to get back to that because I'll show you this last one, which is my favourite one, and this is another reason why it's so important. Notwithstanding all that peer support and natural supports make Mac safe, these are the kind of kids that we're going to grow into adults, and they're going to be the decision makers of the future. So we'll have a look at this. I think we can all see that it's worth the battle. Thanks. And I guess when we're looking for our motivation, that's what we go back to. That's the society we want to be a part of. That's the future we want for Mac. Next time you see me, I may be a little battle weary. My plan is to do it and get there without bloodshed. So I think it's a good goal. But I think we'll get there, and I look forward to being able to say, you know what, we can do this, and even under extreme circumstances, we can do it, because at the end of the day, it is actually worth it. Thank you.